I can also check
We're good.
here.
We
Oh, we're
live,
good. Okay.
bro.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Yo, Cory, can you let me see. Am I
Oh
in
yeah,
this shit?
it's working. I'm on
Alright. Are
Facebook.
you able to change your view?
Like
Like
this.
yeah, now I'm in that corner, baby. Alright, there we go.
Yeah.
Well, we're in here. We're
Haha.
in this thing. What up? This is the second little drum chat I'm hosting throughout this quarantine. But got my dude Cory Limuaco, good homie, plays with a lot of different people that are in our scene in Portland, and just a long time bud. And yeah, he was one of the first people I wanted to get on this series, as was just my intention of reaching out to a bunch of drum homies anyways, to just talk about how we're all staying busy, what we're working on, how we're dealing with this mentally, physically, all that good stuff. So I just decided, starting with Dan last week, that it would just be fun to put it up on Facebook Live, and for anyone else that wants to tune in. So if anyone's out listening, feel free to comment in the section if you want us to think about anything specifically. But yeah, Cory, how you been during quarantine 2020, my dude?
Dude, I'm doing good. Just trying to stay sane like everybody else, I think, in this time of temporary furlough, you know what I mean?
I feel you.
Definitely opens to exploring what you're all about as a person when you don't have anything to occupy yourself with other than your own time. So I think that, in a lot of ways it's been good, just sort of, first of all, just like taking my mind away from music for a little bit, to like kind of, here, let me shut my door because my dog's loud as hell. No, I was saying it's been kind of nice just to actually, kind of the opposite of what we're gonna be talking about, and just to like take time, to kind of, you know, be with, my family,
Yep.
take the time to do the things that I want to do on my own time,
Yeah, man.
whether it's music related or not. I think we're all in a position right now where we don't really have much choice. So we're trying to occupy our time with the best that we can with the things that we have. You know what I mean? And I'm realizing that, not only do I have a lot to work on as a musician, but also as a person as
Right.
well. And I think a lot of people can resonate with that right now, is just trying to, a lot of people are, I see, like, I go on Instagram and I see a bunch of celebrities, posting live stuff, and like, I feel like they're going through the same thing as well. They don't have all these things to occupy their time like usual, so they're really like figuring out, like, whoa, like,
Yeah.
this is what people do, when there's not much going on and they don't have a choice. You know what I mean?
I feel you, man. It's like forced self-reflection, if that's not something that you're constantly like working on, or whatnot. What are some little caveats that have come about in terms of just like uh, personal things that have come out while you've had the chance to take a step back and not forced to, I mean, not forced, but just like having that busy ass schedule that we're used to.
I would say, the lack of work has really brought out the types of anxieties and insecurities that I have as a person. And so learning how to deal with those on a personal level is definitely something that I'm like starting to realize and get better at, honestly, during this time, because, boom boom boom, as musicians we're just going.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of self-reflection time, other than, when we're not working or practicing or gigging or
Yeah.
trying to get gigs or trying to post about gigs or trying to,
Yeah,
I
the
feel like
never ending cycle.
for a while, I mean, a lot of us, including myself, just feel like we're always working towards a goal. And now I get to now that part of that life is on hold in terms of work, I get to set other goals that I was insecure about or I was not sure about or just things that I didn't really put on the forefront of my mindset, like recording music and taking time to edit the videos and and like just stuff on my own. Doing stuff on my own essentially is something that I think, I don't know if other people can relate to this, but something that I always wasn't really sure about, but having the time to just myself in my studio at home every day, I get the opportunity to really mess with that and figure out what my production sound is, what my go-to setup is in the studio, and just things like that I didn't really not care about, but I didn't really put a lot of attention to. I feel like I could have, and now it's it's a realization moment in a sense of, dang, there's a lot I could be doing, right now with not only with the time I have right now, but going forward.
I feel you, man. I can relate to that heavy because I was just talking to a bunch of friends about this. My musician homies that I've been touching base with this last week, but this is probably like the first time I've opened like Logic in like 4 to 6 months, which
Right.
is like pretty shitty to admit, but like just knowing that in starting to dust off those video chops, because I don't know about you, man, but like when I go a little bit like from not recording, it feels kind of like starting over again. Like you know what you're doing, but like everything's slow and inefficient for me when I first get back into it. So
No, for
as
sure.
I'm like getting through a couple of videos, like just like collaborating with some friends during this time, which um recommend for anyone out there right now, just like having a fun outlet. Like we can't play together, so it's at least fun to create together. Because I know
and
all of us.
And going on that note, I would say right now, I know a lot of musicians, including myself, are looking for work, and it's interesting to see. But I'm more on the side of right now getting together and collaborating for free right now. This what we need. I feel like there's going to be a time and place for all of us to get ours back. That time's going to come. I think right now it's the nicest thing about all this is everyone being so open and willing to just fucking okay, you want to make a song together, fuck it, let's do it.
I love that, man. I totally agree. And like it's kind of like I mean, not that any of us like giving away like what we do for free, but this feels different, right? This is a situation where everyone's in this together. Like no one's getting paid unless unless you teach or something. So it does feel freeing in that way to like get like push all the expectation aside from like what typically would be like maybe a bigger ask or something like that. It's just like nice to be like, hey, I'm gonna send you some shit if you feel if you're feeling it. Let's make something out of it. I can keep sending you shit, but like it's pretty fun in that regard. And yeah, it's been cool for me to try to get more efficient with that, work on my mixing sound, all the things you just touched on, like what it means to have a home studio setup and to try to just work on that just like it is your instrument. That's like a different skill set entirely. So
and it's kind of like the same thing of like working on your instrument, because everyone's studio setup is completely different. So you, in a sense, you just have to work with it, and your gear isn't the same as your next buddy's gear, essentially.
Yeah, so you got to figure out how it works for you.
Yeah, you just got to figure it out. And I'm finding that doing it more often, it gets so much easier, as someone who doesn't have their own music out yet, starting to figure out that process, you know, what your production sound is like, you know, I'm like starting to figure out, you know, I have a specific sound that I'm going for when I record now, rather than trying to mix up and do a bunch of different stuff. And like, I just have my same template on my DAW and I just copy and just do a whole new session with the same EQing, same mixing, same everything.
That's dope. And then you can just minor tweak. I had that route. Now I just have a template set up to where like just EQ and compression is already on the channels I want it to be, and then I'm kind of mixing it just like to whatever, like, because I don't know, I just think my drums record slightly differently each time. You know, it's a vintage kit, so like there's different overtones I think that comes from the kit like every time I sit down on it. So I kind of got out of that habit because I was just finding that the template mix wasn't like nailing it every time. So now I'm using it as like let's get through this mix like this time a little quicker. Like let's try to get like that into a practice regimen of like, oh, how can I mix these drums and not take me a fucking hour anymore? You know, like, let's try to get this shit done in like 25 minutes and just be like cool with whatever that product is. So I feel you entirely, man. It's been nice in that regard because like yeah, I guess you and I can relate heavy in terms of how we've like prioritized like just wanting to open up that DAW again and figure this shit out. I figured out the other day, I felt like such a dumbass that like your phone records on a different sample rate than like what the default is in like Logic. I was like, how have I never known this? So like my video, you know, like your video gets like slightly out of time like the longer it gets, and I was just like, mother fuck. I'm like, this is another thing I need to know. Like it just felt like one of those like I'm so dumb moments, but it's good to be figuring it out now. So next time that shit's handled.
Yeah, and like I went through that exact thing doing that foolproof challenge.
Yeah, which by the way was dope, man. You get a lot out of that.
Yeah. What's up?
I said, by the way, that was dope, and your shit sounded killing. You get a lot out of that process of learning that track.
Yeah, I mean, like I definitely haven't recorded a video to match with audio that was that long ever, I don't think. And so like you were just talking about, my video did kind of get like a little laggy behind the audio, like by millisecond, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I dealt with the same exact shit, and I just was like happy to post it as is. I was like, this shit doesn't line up entirely, completely throughout the whole 6 minutes.
Fuck it. But I said, never mind. We'll figure it out later. But that's the type of shit that you need to do in order to be like, oh, okay, so why is that? Why isn't it?
And that was the thing. I never recorded like a 6 minute track. Like, I mean, like I've recorded 3 minutes, 4 minutes to where like I've noticed this thing, but didn't really think anything of it. Where I was like, I must be tripping. Like, there's no way this is getting out of time, like by a millisecond. Like, but when you record longer video, it starts showing like in 4 and 5, 6 minutes, and you're like,
yeah, and I still don't really know how to fix it, but I think it's a matter of like, I don't even know.
The research I found is changing your sample rate. And what your sample rate is in
the video?
In video is 48 hertz. So next time you try to record, I haven't done one since then, but the next time
you just record from your phone?
Yeah, all iPhone, bro. I don't have a good video camera. Like,
yeah.
I mean, not that iPhones is like bad. The iPhone 10 camera is pretty good for what it is, but yeah, I definitely don't have like the color graded like lighting and and all that shit that would like some of these dudes on Instagram have that really dope pro setup where
did you stay on the live feed for the whole time?
I didn't when it cut out. I was there for like the first hour.
Oh my god, that shit! It was a lot of good information.
Oh my god, it was.
Like, whew, man! By 2 hours in, I was like, man, let's get on.
Yeah.
Started to get redundant with some of the stuff, and I was just like, man, I wish sort of like it was nice, definitely, because like I don't know if you heard, but I ended up winning the whole thing.
You did?
Yeah.
Congrats, man! Fuck yeah! I had no idea.
No, yeah, so I won the thing,
That's
but I
fire,
almost,
bro. Well deserved.
hey, it was cool because they shouted y'all out too. Sput shouted you and Damo out. You all made the top 5. Um,
Word.
and
I wish I had stayed with the whole thing, man. That's great.
yeah, they were like, he was saying how you and Dom, uh, when he was listening to yours, he was saying how like he like specifically shouted y'all out because he was like, I can see that those guys are jazz cats. Like they play a lot of jazz. Um, and I don't know if that's a compliment to you or not,
No, it's all good,
um,
man.
but
That's
he
true.
was like, I felt that, and he's like, that's where I'm rooted, and so he was like, I had to shout them out for that because it was like a different thing that they brought mostly than all the other people. You know what I mean? And I agree. I mean, y'all definitely, to me, stood out the most out of anybody else on that thing.
Yeah, there were some ones posted on that were shared through the account that were also just nasty. I mean, just a
Yeah,
lot of great contributions. But that's great, man. I'm stoked. I'm
yeah, it
glad
was funny.
I'm glad one of the boys took it home. That's fucking sick.
EDX represent, baby.
Yeah, dude, it's deep here. We're deep in these woods.
Yeah, it was. He was saying that he was looking for, just to talk about it a little more in regards to what Spot was looking for. He was like, there were those 2 sections, the little hits in the beginning, where he's like, dun,
Yeah.
those ones, and then that bass line in like the interlude
Yeah,
type
dude,
of
that
thing.
synth bass line had some shit in it. That was
So he
really
was saying if people, he was looking for people that learned the song and that played the song
yeah.
and didn't just chop, because cats can chop all day long, and but playing the music, he's saying, is the most important thing out of all of this, and that was kind of his message,
Yeah,
um,
man.
for that challenge. And I think as drummer to drummer, um, especially with you, I see in your playing that you play the music, um, and to me that's like what, as a drummer, I definitely try to do no matter what. Like the chops
Right.
come last for me. I don't super care about you know chopping out, chopping out. But if you
Yeah.
could play the music, then you know the chops will come where they want to. And so doing that challenge, definitely, it was cool seeing like regionally what different drummers decided to do,
Yeah.
because like you know I would like to say that our shit was like very similar in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
Just
I mean, like, I don't think it's untrue that like it's not as deep of a pocket here, right? Like, is like some sort of L.A., Atlanta, Dallas, New York scene,
right,
but what we have here is like a scene of people all influencing each other, right? Like, there's no denying that like when we come out to each other's gigs and support that's all just like funneling in, going to our next gig, hearing some of that shit. It's like it's fun. It's fun being a part of this Portland scene, and how many like
yeah.
fire drummers there are here that are all here to influence one another.
And
And
I'm just waiting for the industry to catch up, because once the industry
yeah,
catches up, then we're in a good position. You know what I mean? The musicality of the Portland scene, not only just from a drummer standpoint, but like, you know, you got, there's so many good musicians out here.
it runs deep, man,
Um,
for real.
and I, I'm just waiting for that moment to come where people like Sput and people like, uh, the Ghost Note Clan really like, recognize this place as a forefront for music. Um, Even though we're a small city, there's like so many. What I tell people a lot is like, like you look at Swatkins and you look at Peter and you look at like a bunch of different other people. They Their background isn't Portland. You know what I mean? They grew up in different parts, and they're bringing what they learned
Yeah,
into the city. Same with Tyrone. Same with
absolutely.
Farnell.
Yeah,
Same with all.
very few are homegrown here in our Portland scene, and that's just a fact. Like there
Yeah,
are some cats, uh, you know, shout out to our homie Sam Arnold, who is like one of the few, right? But it's like
Seriously, yeah.
there's not too many dudes out there that are, or whatever, girls, boys that are doing their thing, like that were homegrown. So you make a good point. I think everyone came here with uh different backgrounds and has all created this cool like little soup soup pot, right? And then
Yeah, and it just
everything's
like,
influence and everything, but now we kind of have a Portland jazz sound and a Portland like funk sound and a Portland like
yeah,
neo soul sound, and that's all from a lot of the similar players, right? A lot of a lot of our homies like are on a lot of the same calls, and that's because everyone's like on their shit. But yeah, man, you make a lot of good points in terms of Portland, um, in terms of the Portland scene and what we have to offer here. It's pretty strong.
yeah. Yeah. I just think that once the recognition is you know, at a certain point, then like the scene that people say here is like, needs work or whatever it may be, like in terms of venue, in terms of, establishment, in terms of pay or whatever that is. I think that'll catch on with time. And I think as long as us musicians keep doing the same thing of just killing it and, like doing these challenges, you know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah,
don't know
man.
about you, but like a lot of people, that I have no idea who they are from different parts of the country, all of a sudden recognize, oh shit, these guys are from Portland. Like, okay, like there's obviously something going on there.
Yeah,
And
that's pretty dope. I had honestly no idea, but 3 out of the 5 being all Portland cats is pretty fucking sick. Like to put on, right?
yeah, exactly. So
That's what's up.
it's just, yeah, it's cool to see that shit, you know, being formed real time on Instagram Live by someone that I look up to 100%. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And he was saying he got together with like Aaron Spears and like a bunch of other drummers, and they all, decided on these people. So it's not just Sput, I mean, it's nice hearing that, recognition is given where it's due. Um,
yeah,
and
man. That shit's still like. I mean, it's all very it's all an honor when like one of your heroes like is not I'm a firm believer in like you don't need admiration to like do what you do, right? But it is nice when someone you're truly inspired by, like in like one of your actual playing heroes, is like, oh, you got it, like
yeah,
you're doing your thing here.
it's like a motivator
Yeah,
to
just to
me.
keep pushing, right? It's like, okay,
Yeah,
what you're doing is working, and you can
yeah,
and you can keep going on this path, like.
most definitely.
And Sput, I mean, I think for you, like just making an assumption, but Sput's like one of my top Mount Rushmore like influences. Like he's
I mean, to me, it's ever since, you know, even though he didn't record the drums on it, but like ever since We Like It Here
yep.
came out, and then I figured out that Sput was the actual drummer for that group, and Larnell subbed or whatever it was. Once I figured out that who Sput was, he immediately became like my top inspiration as far as like
I agree, man.
sound. Like I got Meinl cymbals because of him.
Me too.
Um,
I wouldn't be playing Meinl shit without Sput. Like I
yeah,
got those big ass 16-inch extra dry hats only because of him. Like
yeah,
I was like, I need
and
something that sounds like that.
just like his whole approach on, he talked about it a lot last night during the Q&A. I don't know if you heard, but he was talking a lot about just his approach as a drummer, and he doesn't approach himself from a drummer standpoint. It's more of a musicality thing. And I think that's the thing that a lot of us Portlanders can resonate with as drummers too, is we love music, right? We love drums, but at the end of the day, it's about the music. And like, you, Dan, Damo, everybody that I can think of um, is very musical in their playing. and everyone has like their specific sound and their own story to tell, and it's hard to find that, I think, a lot of the times in a scene, just in general, like everybody, really doing their own thing in their own right with respect to the music, especially as drummers. I just sometimes I stop and I'm like, damn, like you guys are fucking just killing. When I see you guys play, it's like it's inspiration to me, right?
Yeah, I mean, it goes both ways, bro. I'm saying same boat.
And I firmly believe that it does. That's what's the nice part about this scene is that it does go both ways, and it's not just everybody looking up to one guy. It's like everybody's taking bits of information and licks, whatever it may be, influences, styles, sounds. We all like, it's all just like what you were saying earlier, like a little like pot of and because like I said, we all didn't super grow up here, in the Dallas scene, maybe a little different, where a lot of cats really were ground up Dallas,
right?
And it's just interesting to me to think about that from a musical standpoint, and doing that challenge just made me think about it like a lot more, watching all these different videos. Because I did watch them all, like, pretty much, and like it's cool to see like the sound that changes.
Yeah, man, same track, like same amount of information to take in, and you just get to tell your own story on it. I mean, like, and the fact that he made it so long, I think was very intentional from him. Like, he was like, this isn't going to be for everyone. Like, you're going to have to stay with this. This isn't a shed it in 20 minutes and then like.
I don't know about you, but it took me a minute.
Yeah, I had to shed it for like 2 days just to make sure I had all the hits. Like, it took me a second, like, just to make sure I was comfortable with the form. And Spud, like, he wasn't gonna make it easy by making all the interludes 8 bars. He made one 8 and then one fucking 12 and then one 16. I was like, To
be honest, I got the inspiration to do that from Damo, because I saw Damo's video.
Yeah, it was great, man.
And I had no idea that it was even like a challenge or something. And so I was like, wow, that's inspiring. Like, I want to do that. You know what I mean? I didn't even see it from Sput or whoever else. And so, that I sat down with it and I listened to it like twice through, and I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, there's some shit you need to grab, right? It's like,
and
I expected it to be easier on first listen, and then I started listening. I was like, whew,
I tried to play through it after 2 listens, and I was like, there's no way that I'm going to be able to upload this. I couldn't even.
There's no way I'm going to upload this.
There's no way. Yeah. I couldn't get those end hits to save my life.
Yeah.
And it's humbling when you're at home and you have nothing to do.
Yeah, it's
and it gives you that time to just fucking sit there and learn something, because I know that, when we're all super busy, sometimes we don't have a lot of time to learn someone's original music that we have a gig for in a week, because we're doing so many other things during that week. But now is a time where we can like really just focus and like I said, figure out your own sound in that studio.
Yeah, man, it's cool, everyone's interpretation, but like you said, I probably would have missed it, but Peter had tagged all of us in it, and I was like, oh, good shit, Pete, thanks for looking out, man. This is gonna be a fun one to try out. So I had to give it a shot, and it was. I'm glad I did. It was a fun workout for sure.
Mentally, I thought Herbie liked your post.
Physically, I mean, that shit was a trip for me, dude. I mean,
that was real. I
just honestly, like, I almost had a heart attack when I saw that shit come in. I was like, wait, what? I was like, is this a fake account? I was like, this is a fake account, and then I clicked on it, and I was like, oh, motherfucker, this is crazy.
This is like actually Herbie Hancock's. No, Herbie.
I mean,
Herbie's got his ear out everywhere.
I know, and for me, like, I'm sure similarly for you, but like growing up, coming up with like Pete, like Herbie is like my biggest influence musically. Like, he is my number one top musician. of all time. So that'd be like Jesus Christ himself coming in and being like, "Hey, good shit." Like that's, like Herbie is like
Yeah.
the guy of all time for me. The only reason I like jazz entirely is like Herbie Hancock. He was like the interlude to be like, "Hey, check out all of these sounds for me." Like I
Yeah.
like legit, like to this day give him credit for like why I like jazz.
I definitely can say the same thing. I mean, I didn't grow up with jazz at all. Like, I lived on an island, and jazz was not,
Yeah,
not
not
really a huge thing. So when I moved out here, uh, I was in a high school jazz band, whatever, but my band program was like pretty killing, and my band director whipped out a maiden voyage big band arrangements, and that I was like, who is this?
Mm-hmm.
Who wrote the originals for these? And he was like, oh, Herbie Hancock. You should check them out. And so I went home and I looked up Maiden Voyage, and that album definitely like shape shifted my interest in not only jazz, but it's like a type of jazz that I think that not modern, but younger cats definitely resonate with a little more.
No doubt.
And so yeah, Herbie, to me, not even being a keyboard player, he like influenced a lot of my sound as a drummer.
No question.
And so yeah, when I saw that shit, I was like, damn, that is fucking tight. Like Herbie's just out here watching random videos.
I mean, that was a trip for me for sure, bro. And like it's still crazy to me. But yeah, dude, it was nuts because as far as like you just said, as far as the whole musical spectrum of how you can be influenced, like all of his drummers, like Harvey Mason, Mike Clark, like everyone that played with his shit is exactly what I was trying to sound like. Like, especially when I was forming what it meant to be, what it meant to like start creating a voice. When you're in college and you're just like, what the fuck do I actually want to sound like? You're shedding a lot, but all you have is like ideas, and all you're doing is like creating a vocabulary to eventually like have a sound. And all of those guys were my vocabulary. Like that's all I was playing. So yeah, it was for sure just nuts because everything he's touched is exactly what I try to emulate.
And so for you, that should be like a reminder, right, that you're on the right track as far as like what you're going for yourself. If the main source has recognized, he didn't like my post. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but like he's recognizing your sound as like, if you're saying you go for that Harvey Mason, that Mike Clark, that Herbie sound, and then the source recognizes that from across the country, that's a big deal. Yeah, even if it's just a liked post, like he probably watched your shit, you know what I mean? And like he was like, oh, this cat is killing. Yeah. And so that's like, Sput picking me is like like it's like it's a reminder that you're doing what you're supposed to do, not from what anyone else is telling you, but what your personal agenda is. I think that's pretty dope, just in terms of like self-progression, is when you get those type of reminders in a sense. And yeah, I mean, it's just, I'm saying, like, being here and taking the time to do these things really, opens up my just general, like, what's the word? Just opens up, like, not only my patience, because for a while, I feel like some of us can feel like we're just, like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? At least for me, sometimes I feel like that in this crazy business. But when you get these types of assurances, it feels really good to see that, just seeing it in general. I know that you're saying you're a firm believer in, like, you're not taking those things for granted or whatever, but I think sometimes it's nice to just sit back and be like,
yeah,
like, a little pat on the back.
yeah. I mean, it's not that it doesn't help. I just mean I try to separate myself from
Right.
like that desire for affirmation, even though human
Yeah,
nature,
yeah.
like
You should
all
never. I
that
mean,
that's
I
not,
agree.
in other words, it's not that it's not great, especially from people that you admire, right? That's when it's like, really, oh man, that means a lot, right? And you know that feeling. But I just mean, I'm trying my best to totally reshape my mind from, I don't know, I think like vibey jazz culture of like, oh, I want everyone to like my playing, right? That's kind of how like we're brought up in like in a jazz like jam setting, that's like forced on you from a young age, and then like you have to unlearn all of those things to just be like, I like playing because for me, and just go back to like why you actually fucking drum, right? It's not like to have like all the cats tell you that you're like on some shit. It's just,
Right.
it's literally because you like to play and you like
Yeah.
the people you're playing with, and that shit inspires you. So yeah, like it goes both ways. I think it's a good source of inspiration when you get any sort of admiration from someone you admire, but yeah, it's both.
Most up, dude. Let's see. Let's see what's on. I'm just looking at this. I have like my Facebook pulled up just to see what people are.
We got Matt Sasma just dropping in with the jokes right away.
Taste. What did he say?
He says, "Tell me about your hottest licks for teens and tweens." Just
Ah,
bringing the heat right away.
that's an easy one. No, I'm kidding.
What? um. So, bro, what? I guess just changing gears a little bit. What does like your kind of daily shit look like when you're at this, I guess, in terms of not just being able to take a step back, but more focus on the drumming side? Like, how are you using this downtime aside from like the actual proof challenge on a more regular day? Is that like putting a little bit of time into the recording, putting a little bit of time into shedding, like different styles? Like, I guess just like what are you getting after, because of the quarantine, that maybe you otherwise wouldn't be focused on so much, aside from like recording?
It's interesting because I don't know if this answer is the same as a lot of people's, but I've actually been taking a little bit of a step back.
Yeah.
Just in terms of the practice regimen of constantly thinking about, what do I got to shed next? What do I got to, accomplish? Who do I want to start? Like, who do I want to listen to? What I've been doing a lot of is listening, and straight up just listening and learning from that, and bringing that, whatever resonated with me, into my studio, because a lot of what I'm focusing on right now is the studio process, and just figuring out what works best for me in terms of the studio. And I think a lot of us are at a point right now where we can find little things to work on, and we're gonna get better. So I'm not super worried about, okay, what should I what should I work on? It's I don't want to go back to Sput, but he said something last night that
I was just gonna piggyback off of that. You sound just like what he was talking about last night.
Yeah, and that him saying that didn't make me, okay, I'm gonna say that shit tomorrow. Like, it's seriously what I've been doing. Not even during the quarantine, but like before that. A lot of my practice regimen has been listening to things that I really enjoy, and trying to bring those styles into my playing, because the rudiments, the tempo, the time feel, I think, for a lot of us is there now. It's just a matter of, really, what I'm trying to do now is really figure out what my sound is.
Yeah.
and just, not separate myself, but like really essentially just try to form a new process of practice. And I think that our whole lives as people who've gone to school for this shit, we're taught to develop a practice regimen, to sit down at the kit,
Yep.
to write some shit out, to transcribe, to learn solos, to whatever it may be. And I had a lesson maybe about a year ago with
I know you're gonna talk about, yeah.
Yeah, and that shit changed my whole perspective on what practice is. Because he was telling me he don't even really practice. It's just he does what his practice is everyday life, and what those emotional, outputs of going through everyday life, he brings those emotions into his playing and his practice. And he kind of put it to me like, because I was telling him I felt like last year I was getting in a rut of not really knowing what to practice, and feeling stuck. And
Yep.
he put it to me like, maybe you should try, practicing essentially your emotion with the music.
Yeah,
and
man.
like
that's so heavy too. Like Lenny, when he plays, you can hear that, and
yeah, you hear it.
You can hear his soul come through, like the drums.
You do.
Like
And
way more so than guys that have, you know, as much technical ability as him. Like he is literally like telling you his feelings every time he sits down and drums.
Yeah.
So when you told me that right after I think probably right after you had that lesson or something, we were chatting, like it feels like a year ago. And yeah, it was inspiring to hear. And I remember you getting off like a Jack London hit or something. I was like, dude, I just want to tell you, like that was some like shit, like that was inspiring as hell. And you were like, yeah, man, like I had just had this lesson, and I feel like it's opened this whole new like door in my brain. And yeah, ever since then, I've seen that influence philosophically on your playing, because you're always taking all these different sponged ideas, but then formulating in a way that's like very fucking Cory, like it's your sound. And good on you for being able to craft that and like sharpen like whatever that is for you, because it shows every time you're on a gig. You sound like you all the time. You sound like you.
And he put it to me, this way, like, which really put it there for me in terms of like what I needed to hear. So no one else is gonna do what you're doing. Other people are gonna play the same licks. Other people are gonna play the same rudiments. Other people are gonna play the same groups. But no one has gone through what you've gone through in your specific life. So you need to be able to kind of untrain your brain. He said this word for word: untrain your brain as a college, instructed musician, or a school instructed musician.
Word.
And sort of deconstruct your practice routine in a way that is going to be different but still informative. So like for him, he kind of just gave me an example. He loves computers. And so taking that notion of like the emotion and feeling he gets from just computing, and like think like for me, like I love video games.
Yeah.
And like the emotion I get from that shit, I bring that shit into my playing, and it's so unrelated, but like it's at the same time, like if you start thinking about music in this way, and thinking about the construct of I thought a lot of, after that lesson, I thought a whole lot about the whole upbringing I had of music, and it was all teacher taught. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, as a little kid, we don't really have any
Yeah,
other
we don't really.
information, whatever's being just like talked at us, we just, that's our background as far as like
Yeah.
how we get to be able to at least say poons cuts boom, like we can't do anything
Hmm.
but that until
And then, so that's what I was bringing it back to. Like, I feel like a lot of us are at a certain point now to where we can sort of get away from that a little bit and start really like diving into the personal sound. And so for
yeah,
me,
man.
my practice, when we're talking about what I've been doing practice wise, a lot of it has just been just kicking it and like experiencing life and my emotions, and then like bringing that into the music, and you know, the shedding and all that stuff, that comes natural because we all just want to keep getting better. And so like I hear something that's dope and I'm like, oh shit, I want to learn that. You know, that's you know, normal, and that's going to keep happening all the time. Just as musicians, we always are working on making our physical sound better. But I think the one thing that can put one musician over the other, not in a competition level, but just in terms of mindset, is really breaking down that like emotion aspect of music, because music is super emotional,
Right.
and so you want to be able to tap into that when you're practicing, when you're making beats, when you're gigging.
Yeah, I agree,
You know what I
man.
mean?
I agree, man. It's so not talked about enough, right? In terms of what we do, especially on a clinician education standpoint, right? And
Yeah,
it's important, I think, to instill that in like young drummers these days, that like while I'm teaching you what a paradiddle means, like let's listen to what it sounds like and
exactly.
why we would choose that option in this setting or something like that. But yeah, those are just tools in your tool belt, right? To pretty much be able to say something that's going to convey what you're talking about, the emotional side of what we do. And that's, it's easy to forget that shit. And
No, it's super
and
easy.
if you're not getting into that mindset, I've started to do like a small meditation before each time I play live, and it's not like probably that noticeable to people, but it's just like taking a few seconds for
I do
myself
too. If
to
if
to
people notice, you know, I
to
take step away. I
yeah,
literally leave the
to
room.
just to remind myself like
Hmm.
why it is I'm doing this, what I want to get out of it, and the fact that like I need to be able to separate my ego from whatever is about to happen. And then
Yeah,
that's going to be not only bringing me the most joy, but I'm going to sound better because
yeah,
I'm not thinking about how can I insert myself into this setting. I'm only going to be thinking about, oh man, I'm hearing this right now. How can I convey that? Or at least do my best. If it's something like crazy, then I might go for it. But like you know what I mean, just being able to sit back and actually listen and hear it and like tell your side of the story within the musical context.
yeah,
And you always see it when people watch Corey play, it's just like it's very evident that he's in there, he's present, but he has a voice that he wants to share. And so that's the cool thing. Anytime I
yeah.
get to watch you play is so much enjoyment out of seeing you work through that process that we first talked about a year ago when you had that lesson with Lenny.
Yeah, and you know, I would say the most important thing that I try to remind myself, at least on the bandstand, when you do the homework, right? You, you just got to have fun, you know, at the end of the day. And it really comes down to just having fun, because like I started doing this because it was fun.
Yep.
And now that it's a job, like, you know, different responsibilities come into that. But at the same time, it's just fun. And if you remind yourself that and you do the homework and you know your stuff, then all the other things like I was talking about with emotion and like you don't have to think about, okay, downbeat's coming, what am I doing next? You know what I mean? It's like it just you begin to get on this roll where it's like you don't necessarily have to think too much about the nitty gritty about the music. Like it's kind of hard to explain, but at a certain point, you just kind of gotta have fun with it. And
I mean, yeah, totally agree, bro.
And the practice room talk, like what I'm doing in the practice room, I am constantly fucking up in the practice room. I sound like if someone were to hear me in the practice room and compare it to, the stage or whatever, they're two completely different players. I use the practice room as the time to mess up the most.
Yeah, and amen to that, bro, because if that's not what your practice room is for, then like like why would you be trying to impress anyone in your practice room, right? That's the avenue to just throw it out what you feel and what you hear, to for the hopes of it coming out naturally when we're playing in front of people, right? Like that's what a practice room's for. It's not for sounding good,
Right.
And that's like I think like people that like a young millennial like Instagram mentality is like, oh, gotta always sound dope, like, you know what I mean, like with Instagram culture especially. I feel like everyone's constantly worried about like how they sound, but all in all, man, that's exactly what the practice room should be for, is fucking up, fucking up, fucking up, fucking up, and then like, oh man, that sounds pretty nice now, like how can I apply this shit, um not like force that lick, force that thing you shedded into, like not to overly insert it, like just forcefully, but just like now it's there for your access, and that might come out, might not. Yeah. It might come out 2 months later, and you're like, oh, word.
Yeah, and that's more of for like my students that I try to tell that to. It's I try to let them know like you'll be teaching. I don't know if you go through the same thing, but you're teaching a younger student, and they keep saying sorry when they mess up.
I tell them no sorries in here. That's literally what I tell them every lesson when they say, I say, I don't want to hear that word in here, man. Just stop saying sorry.
It's funny because you get to a certain point, I think, when you keep doing this, is like you realize like the practice room is the safe space to fuck up all the time, and like you almost feel good when you're doing that because you're getting better. If I were to just be shedding all day in the practice room and fucking everything's perfect, I feel like I wouldn't be accomplishing anything. So getting in there and getting frustrated with myself,
yep,
is a motivator to get into the practice room more. So from your original question, I would say, listening and learning is my biggest thing. But when I'm teaching others, a lot of it is to get in the practice room and to, do things that are too hard. Do things that are hard so that you do mess up and that you do want to learn them. You know what I mean? Whether it's rudiments, whether it's a song, whether it's producing anything, if time signatures, that's mainly it. But a lot of it for me right now, at the point where I'm at in my musical journey, is just straight up listening, conceptualizing, and emulating. Those are like my 3 steps that I'm taking right now.
That's a beautiful approach though, man. If you're doing those 3 things constantly, there's no way you could be taking a step back, even if that day specifically, like your chops weren't at their peak, right? There's absolutely no way you could ever take a step backwards if you're constantly massaging those 3 muscles, right? It's like,
right,
how can I conceptualize what I'm hearing? How can I tell that story
in my own way?
And then let's soften the edges a little bit to where like this shit sounds the way I want it to.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, I'm not Spud. Yeah, I'm not.
As much as I'd like to be, I'm not. Yep. And
I'm not Corey Fonville. I'm not any of the people that I look up to. But I can definitely, take a lot of what they're saying.
Yep.
And put that into my own definition and vocabulary.
And that's what I think, yeah. sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's what
No,
I
no,
think all
that's basically the
that's what
finished
I
thought.
think the important use of influences are, right? Not to like try to jack everything that they're about and just like like, you know, as much as I love Chris Dave, I'm never gonna sound like Chris Dave. But like I fucking love Chris Dave. So like
Yeah,
there's a lot of what he said that I try to incorporate into in my own way of saying it, right? But it's never gonna sound like Chris Dave because there's no other Chris Dave. Like, you know, and to your
right.
point, I think that's like how to apply influence because you and I look up to a lot of the same dudes. Like pretty much our whole list of like top 100 drummers would probably have 95 of the same names if
Right.
I'm guessing, right?
But
Like
our sound is
but
complete.
our sound isn't the same, right? We play similar grooves, we play stylistically some things that there's a lot of crossover, right? It's not like you and I are entirely different drummers, but to say it's pretty dope that like to put an example to this, a great example would be listen to you on a gig and then listen to me on the gig, and we pretty much only listen to like the same guys.
Yeah. No,
So
totally.
I mean
And
that's a really good point you want to make, that I think like we're a good example of like how we've both um
internalize.
subconsciously internalized all that shit.
Yeah. No,
Um,
definitely. I don't know.
Machado has some good questions in here, man. I want to touch those before we head out today.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, most definitely.
um, this first one is: what is the most difficult conceptual barrier for you two as drummers? What do you think you struggle with the most? Ooh,
Mine would definitely be not being uh, timid to um, not being timid to expose myself in a musical way. So like playing, you know, accepting gigs and doing things that I'm not necessarily comfortable with. I think I need to start changing that mentality and playing a couple country gigs. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Playing a couple um doing, you know, gigs that require a lot of reading, just things like that where I feel like I've definitely because the point of being a freelance musician is to offer ourselves work where work is needed. And I think sometimes I feel like I can limit myself in terms of the avenues that I choose to go down. When I think, at least for me, it would be good to to do some of these things that I don't feel comfortable with, because it could open me up to a whole new branch that I wasn't even aware of. So for me, it's definitely just, you know, at the same time, we all want to stick to our guns and stuff, but that just, it's like practicing. We're getting better at things that we're not super comfortable with. So for me, you know, that's opening my eyes up and listening to different genres of music that I don't necessarily resonate with, and finding things that I can benefit from within those. Uh, whether it's country, whether it's rock, whether it's progressive, you know,
yep,
prog metal, like I've found some things in those styles of music since I've been a little bit more conscious of that like I really do mess with, and I really like now, you know. Um, what's that one group Matt Garska's in? Animals as Leaders.
yeah, man. I've been messing with them since college.
Like I just figured out who they were like maybe a year and a half ago,
They
and
are tough, bro. Like musicianship out the yin yang, but also just like how great their sound is together.
yeah,
It's crazy. It's all things like technical, all things emotional, all put in together. Like being able to play this much mathy shit in such a beautiful way is inspiring to me.
yeah, and I
So
definitely do think so. For me, that's like the biggest conceptual barrier I have is like not being afraid to uh, step out in that regard. You know what I mean?
yeah, I guess for me, I'll answer it in I guess two ways. Con- Philosophically, I guess it would be playing whatever I hear regardless of the situation or the setting might be like the Barry I'm most looking forward to, um just one day not having anymore. I wouldn't say that I let like certain rooms or situations get the best of me. That's not what I want to put out, but just like sometimes I'll get off a gig and be like, I kind of let like external factors like fuck with me on this gig. I didn't play everything. I wasn't as present as I could have been, and I didn't play everything that I wanted to,
Yeah.
um, because of X, Y, and Z, right? And um, so that philosophically is probably, um, my conceptual barrier. I look forward to just hopefully having dissolve more and more each day. I guess from a technical standpoint, um, I don't know, like a million things I can always get better at. Maybe odd time signatures I want to like be just like more fluid with over time. Make that shit always be as comfortable as 4/4 down the road.
Yeah.
Not that I can't play in 5 or 7 or solo over those, but just get to the point of comfort one day where all that shit's like not having to grab onto the musical melody to be able to hear some of those things and just be able to speak more fluidly in those. I'd
Of course.
say that it's like those are my two answers from a philosophical standpoint and a technical standpoint.
Yeah.
That was a great question, Machado. Thanks, bro. Um, what does he got next? What do you think defines your sound? Oh, bro, that's loaded. I don't
That's
know.
gonna take a whole nother hour to answer,
Yeah,
no?
bro. I guess I don't know if there's like an easy answer. I guess we've been talking about it this whole time. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know if like it's something, right? Because for me, sound is developed with so many different ways. Not only the timbre of the gear you choose, right? Like Machado's a great example of like he's got specific sound, not only through his playing, but like he has all of this gear that he's like hand selected to like be his voice. And so
Hmm.
like not only is it like what you choose your tones to be, but then what your influences are like has everything we've been talking about for the last hour, right? It's hard to put into a nutshell. But I guess it's just whatever your approach is and how you've put together all of your influences to say
Yeah.
what you want to say.
I think
um
at the end of the day, it just comes down to the package, like that
yep.
you've been able to assemble since the beginning of your journey, like your resume, uh, in regards to your your influences, your gig, like what you've been primarily doing your whole time as a musician, who you've studied with.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different factors that go into it, but I think to just answer that question, what do you think defines your sound? I would say for me, like the biggest thing I try to be aware of all the time is um, like I said earlier, like nobody is doing exactly what you're doing. So trying to remember that, and keeping that. What do you say? Oh, Matt.
Matt's just clowning full time.
That was a quick call, dude. That was a quick call with the fam. Is everything okay? Y'all good out there, Matt? No, but anyway, I'm just saying, like, the package for me is like what defines my sound, at least. Just want to hear you boys describe your drumming as if they would start. Give me your 5 year playing. Dark roast. Definitely need a little bit of cream and sugar.
Oh,
So,
you're killing me.
no, but that's a hard question to answer. I would just say like everything that you have been doing up until this point describes your sound. Like everybody's is different. You know what I'm saying? And like Machado, he plays saxophone and does a damn good job at it, and you can definitely hear that in his drumming.
No doubt.
You know what I mean? you can tell that he plays an instrument that is in regard to that. So it's, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just a package and kind of what you've been doing as your person every day. It's like your personality in a sense.
Man, I'm even trying to formulate how I describe my shit in a Starbucks coffee blend. That's some creative shit, Machado, and only Machado would ask that question. Um, hmm. Smooth, smooth on the front end, with a harsh espresso punch on the back end. How about that, Machado? Is that good enough for you, bro?
What instrument would I play if I couldn't play drums?
Oh, Matt already knows. I'm obsessed with keyboard. I'm trying to
you already should know.
I'm trying to teach myself best I can with a lot of Matt's help in terms of music theory this year. So shout out to Matt, one of my best friends, for helping me get started in this long journey ahead of being able to, and it's helped me a lot. Now I can write music for our group together and at least bring ideas to him and be like, hey, Matt, fuck this up. Like, here's the general concept.
Yeah.
So that's been really cool. Matt already knows for sure. I'm a keyboardist in another life.
Dude, I'm a bass player.
Yeah, that makes sense, bro. That makes all the sense.
I literally wish, still to this day, sometimes I wish I played bass over drums. Not even like just because not even like, oh, I don't like playing drums. But like when I hear a good bass player, that shit hits me way harder than when I hear a good drummer.
Oh man, agreed entirely. Yeah.
And a lot of me, I'm gonna start playing bass, so I'm gonna start taking all these motherfuckers gigs.
Oh, get him! I can't wait to hear Cory on bass, bro. Call me for gigs. Call me for gigs, Cory, when you get there, all right?
Dude, let's just start a duo. Just bass and fucking drums, and I'll learn bass. I'm gonna take lessons from Sam Arnold.
Yeah, get him, man. But yeah. When you have some gigs to call for, you know a drummer, right?
I definitely wish. Yeah, I mean, I'm not wish. If there was another instrument that I had started on, it would definitely be bass for sure. But yeah. Let's see. I lost the feed.
You lost the chat. Well, nothing else has came in yet, but
But yeah, man. I mean, I think this was a really productive talk, just in terms of like.
No kidding.
Oh, JP just messaged. I don't even know what that means. Could mean something bad.
Nah, man, he heard your bass talk. That's what that means.
Oh, JP's keeping it. Bass, brother?
Yeah, bro. JP, get at Cory, man. Get at him.
Dude, it's just, yeah, like listening to the cats in Portland, like there's so many killing bass players, and it just inspires me to like. I just want to be able to do that too, and it's still, and even in the production thing, like I find myself always recording bass last, and my bass chops on the keyboard are ass, and so like I want to be able to play bass, you know what I mean, and like do it at a decent level.
I feel you, man.
So if there's any bass players on this chat that want to hook your boy up with some dive lessons,
I think you know a few, bro. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. I think you know a couple. Oh, Machado came in with one. This is probably a good one to end on.
Yeah.
What is your favorite performance in the last year been? Oh, that's too tough for me, man.
Is this are we talking 2020? Because it hasn't been a whole long of a year, or are we talking about 2019?
I think he probably means like the whole last year.
Oh shit.
That's just really hard.
Dude, I played at the London. I played in the Islington Assembly Hall in London, and that shit was like really fucking dope. Calendar year, fam. When was my first kiss? Jesus Christ.
Matt, just steady with it.
365.25.
So, well, I'm sorry. What were you saying though about the London gig?
I was saying that was just my favorite gig over the last year, or playing. No, I gotta take that shit back. That's a hard second. The first one was playing at the Sisters Folk Fest with the Hamiltons.
Oh yeah, man, that was mean.
That shit was. I'm just laughing at these comments. Yeah. That shit was just like it. Like I was saying, of like opening myself up to like a style of music that I was uncomfortable with. It was Baptist church music. It wasn't Pentecostal church music. So like there's a humongous difference between the two, and I didn't exactly know that before I did the gig. And we had a rehearsal with the Hamiltons before those two shows, and we learned the music really well and did everything that we needed to do, but there were subtleties that I didn't know about that are in regard that deal directly with Baptist church music that is different from Pentecostal church or Christian church and so like that was definitely my favorite gig, because not only did we smack and it was like super fun, but there was a lot of like learning experience that came with it. So, and what do you think swing is? Bang, spang-a-lang,
dude, baby. Just spang all the lang, man. For me, that's really difficult to answer, because I'd have to like take a look literally at my calendar. I'm probably missing so many that would be worthy of that title. A couple off the top of my head would be, and I don't even know if it was within the last 365 days, but it's probably about that, was getting a call from Tyrone to sub for him because he couldn't make the gig, playing with Eric Benny Bloom from Lettuce on his hit with Trent. And,
that's sick.
Trent and Ben was just all the fucking fun, man. Just playing like straight organ quartet shit. And he, to this day, he's probably one of the best musicians, if not the best musician I've ever shared a stage with. So that was pretty special for sure. And then another one, just like real talk, getting this project started with Matt and Sam, like the first show playing with them, just felt like this culmination of just like pure joy of like, oh man, I'm so stoked for this project to get started. And like, I don't know, I think you were there at that show, right? Yeah, you were there for sure with Micah's solo project as well.
Yeah,
but like it wasn't even like we've played better shows since then. Obviously, that was our first gig ever, but like just the energy of like, man, I cannot wait to start this project with like two of my best friends in the whole world. So that was just like a really special gig for me, and like one I'll always hold near and dear for sure. Not that like it was the craziest gig I've ever played, but like situationally, like what that meant for me.
Right. No, and I mean, it doesn't have to be like the craziest amount of people.
Festival slot or some shit, right? It's like what sometimes it just means different.
But I guess we can end on this last question that Matt had about what we actually think swing is, because that's a super hard question. I still don't really have an answer for that. I just do what feels right in regard to that style of music.
Yeah, because I think swing gets...
Oh, I like that question.
I think that there's like a misconception that like, I mean, not amongst jazz musicians, but amongst maybe non-jazz musicians, that like swing always feels the same. And like, we know that that's not true, right? Like depending on like how hard you're swinging and like what the feel is, like that shit straightens out a little bit more and goes like almost like dotted 16th note shit, or it can be like really smooth and triplety. So I think it's contextual for me in terms of like whatever the vibe of the song is, and how hard I'm trying to like tip into the downbeat, right?
Yeah. Like, I mean, for me, like swing is like definitely subjective, because to me that Sput challenge, that shit was swinging. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, and he mentioned that, and it was funny when he started talking about it to himself, because he was like, oh, I wanted this shit like to swing and like see what it felt like because I love triplets. And like
Yeah.
it made me kind of chuckle because I was like, yeah, to me, like that is the Sput groove. Like I don't
Yeah.
think of Sput's playing in any other way if I had to come up with like that is Sput's signature groove. The up
Yeah.
tempo, the up tempo super swung funk vamp is Sput's signature to me. Like that is his own, and like I've definitely tried to shed that endlessly. Um,
Yeah. To me, swing is based off of feeling. Like
yeah, yeah,
it's a feeling type of thing. When something's swinging, you know it's swinging. You know what I mean? It's not. To me, I don't even think of swing as eighth note bass, triplet bass. Like I never learned swing as that shit. Because you look at a chart of music, and you know when they write this ride pattern down on the swing, like some of them write them in triplets, and some of them write them in eighth notes or dotted 16, whatever the fuck. But I never based it off that shit. I just
yeah.
based it off like how it feels.
Yeah, and I know it's a hard question to answer, and I know I've talked to Matt about it in the past, and he has a much probably better, well thought out response. But I agree with you, man. It's like how much tension I want to provide into, like, how much like recoil, how much slap I want to go back into the feel of the song. Like that's whatever like the swing means there. Like obviously if I'm teaching a beginner student swing, I'm breaking it down in terms of let's lose that middle triplet and think about how these eighth notes sound, right? Triplet.
Right.
Like I have to break it down for a way for them to understand just the
Yeah.
concept of swung music, right?
But if we're talking about
But
how
if we're
I think
talking
of swing
about
now,
philosophically,
yeah,
like conceptually, what swing means to me, I just like lose all that shit. And like, of
yeah,
course, it's more triplet based than not, but um, uh, just yeah, how much tension I want or how much tip I want to go into the downbeat. In other words, like that's what swing is in a situational basis for me.
yeah, totally. And I think I gotta get off here, so I'll answer Kyle's question real quick. Um, best trick
Man.
for using a backline kit is make sure you take the time, you know, uh, to make sure you take the time to set that shit up exactly how you
Yep.
play, exactly how you sound. You
Yeah.
want to try to make that kit, assuming that you have the time to do it.
Right. Sometimes, yeah, 15-minute changeover, you don't get a choice. You just got to
And
play that
and
shit.
when it is a 15-minute changeover, learn how to tune heads quick.
Uh-huh.
Because
Real talk.
that's what I do when I don't have a lot of time. I just make the floor tom sound like how I want it on my kit. I tune the snare up because I love the snare up, and then the toms, you work with what you got. But like kick, everything got to be quick. But when you have the time, set it up as close to your setup as possible.
Yeah, especially like speaking of angles and surfaces, make sure it feels like what you're used to playing.
And
sure.
So assume there's not much time, right? If you need to set up angles and you need to set up, if it really just does not feel right,
Yeah.
set up the essentials that you feel like you need the most to
No doubt.
deliver.
If that means you can't play this gig, I mean most people bring a snare, right? But like let's use the most important sound on your drum kit, which is everyone knows is your snare tone. Like that defines a lot of drummers like in how they play. So if that's the most important thing, like make sure that shit's right for starters, but most of the time you have your own snare on the gig. But I would just add to that point of don't be afraid to like untune toms and like tune them back up. Like a lot of drummers are like scared. A lot of drummers are like scared shitless of that. Like they're like, oh, this drum's like already kind of in tune, but like don't be afraid to like at home practice this shit to where like you can do that in 3 minutes and get a quality tone. Like
no, 100%.
And I used to be in that camp where I was like, if I detune this drum, I'm never gonna get it back. It's just lost for the whole world. Like that just went into a black hole, and I can't get this drum to sound good again. And then I started just tuning drums more, and I realized like that's just like anxiety. Like Learn how to like throw the tension down on some tom heads and then slowly work it back up, and obviously get quicker with that. Learn how to get to your tone. One thing I like to do as a trick is maybe knock on the side of a tom, see how it just rings naturally from like the shell. Just like
Mm-hmm.
try to match that. Boom, boom, boom. Now the tom sounds pretty good.
And
Like
knowing what kind of heads, like knowing what type of heads are on the drums, and let's say you've got coated ambassadors on them, it's knowing the different types of heads will make tuning a lot easier. Just in terms of, it's 2-ply, so I can afford to do this and that to it. But I don't have a lot of time, so I don't want to go into a whole new can. But basically knowing the gear that's on stage, and then working with what you got and the amount of time you have as efficiently as possible.
Yeah. Also, if you're on tour, it's always a good thing to bring some fucking gaff tape or some drum dots with you. Whatever like muffling you're comfortable with. Bring gels. Like, it's a good thing just to have in your bag. Like, I try to keep that shit in my sick bag, and when I forget it, I'm always like, man, I know I should have brought this shit. Because like,
and if you have the opportunity to give a rider, always put gels on there, because the heads are usually going to come new, and new heads aren't really, to me, that dope. So I like worn-in heads. So I like to push them in. I like to fuck them up a little bit.
Push that shit in, and then retune them.
But yeah, so that's it for the most part. Just work with what you got and as fast as you can.
Work with what you got as fast as you can. That's our biggest tip of the day. Everyone,
rush through everything and take zero time.
Yeah, rush your brains out and just chop out for days. That's what you learned today. But real talk,
thank you for listening to my TED Talk.
Yeah, it's been fun chatting with you, bro. I'm super glad we got to do this. I'm sure it won't be the last time, man. But you stay safe out there, and thanks for spending the time. I didn't expect us to go this long, but it was just flowing. Thanks for everyone commenting, because we wouldn't have had all this material to talk over. So this has been super fun, man. Love you, bud. We'll talk soon.
Yeah, love you too, man. You stay safe out there.
All right, peace, man.